Baker's Dozen, folks. Welcome to episode 13 of the Bowl30 podcast. Let's burn. Let's see if Lucas is home. I hear him. What's up? Your hair looks like you were riding a motorcycle today. No? It's a little bit. You alright? Exactly what happened. Lucas just took a huge dab. That's what just happened. You came. Or either that or you're choking. Are you choking? No.
That's the whole idea.
Well, yeah, you kind of have to speak in that way where you don't like name people's names on podcasts. It's kind of like the etiquette of things. I mean, I guess you could say like if you use someone's first name, you know. I mean, God, you know, I mean, it's somebody, but out of, like, you imagine if that person hears it, you know? So, like, to conceal their identity, you're being kind to them, you know? So you would just say, like, but you were just saying that somebody sent you some images on your computer, and then you got a computer virus.
Yeah.
Which is so funny, dude. That's the number one way that you get a computer virus is by, like, browsing porn.
So I told the dude, I said, that's it. Don't ever send me another picture again, please.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know, so you have these little messages. And I get online and look at what Dave, well, there's a name too, Dave sent me. And it's just like chicks with giant boobs and shit. And the next thing I know, my computer was completely ruined. Even my brother, who works for a computer imaging company, could not fix this.
He couldn't fix it?
So you know what he did? He just he just gave me another used laptop and said, here, we'll set you all up again.
Wow. They just, like, wrecked it bad enough.
It wouldn't, there was no fixing it. Yeah. I had 2 or 3 people try to do it. And
see,
my
that's
brother...
the time you can replace, just like, if you replace the hard drive, most of the time that'll take care of it, you know?
And my brother is a very, very talented computer person. I mean... If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even own a laptop.
Yeah. Computers are fun. There was like a period of time where it was like really great, where you could like customize things, and like now with like the newest versions of Windows, dude, it's like it's all touchscreens and like that, or like there's no tweaks you can make to it.
So is this already on right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so
and I'll chop it up anyway.
So I want to give you a little of my background. Okay, for Christmas, when I was 12 years old, I got my very first bass.
Your very first bass guitar?
When I was 12.
At 12.
At 12. I'm 52 years old.
See, how it's supposed to go is I'm supposed to ask you. I'm supposed to say, how did you get into music, brah?
Well, my answer to that would be listening to all this classic rock, and then all of a sudden I just wanted to learn how to play an instrument. And the thing with my parents, they said, we'll get you this bass for Christmas and this amplifier, but under one condition, that you sign up for some lessons. So we don't want you just
good condition
noodling in the basement and trying to learn on my own. So my first bass teacher, who's actually moved to Aspen, and he performs live at a lot of the clubs in the ski areas, he taught me for about 6 months before he moved. And that's what got me started. And he was a book smart player. Everything he taught me, he's showing the sheet music to me. But at first, I didn't really pursue learning how to read music. And then after years and years of playing and being in some garage bands, I'd say about 20 years into just trying to learn by ear and playing with other musicians and watching them. Then I actually learned all the notes, all the strings.
And all the notes. Wait, so you learned how to read music when you
still can't read music.
You still can't?
I can transpose. So if you give me a piece of sheet music, what I have to do is I have to look at the individual notes. Now on a music stanza, the top line is the treble clef. Okay. So if you're playing the piano, that's going to be the higher register, which is going to be your right hand. And the lower register is your left hand. So when you play piano, you have to read both stanzas at the same time. That takes a ton of talent.
So you're reading 2 lines of text, basically?
Well,
you're reading the music.
They're notes on a staff.
Yeah, instead of characters, you have notes.
Correct.
Written left to right.
So then
they're actually, when they're playing piano, they're reading 2 lines?
Yes.
At the same time?
It's unbelievable.
Dude, I had no idea.
No, you didn't?
No.
So if you have a piece of sheet music,
I did not know that.
Especially for a piano player, you're going to see a treble clef and a bass clef.
Wow.
One clef is this hand, one clef is this hand.
Yeah.
All the low notes are down.
Yeah, so the right hand is the lower line? Or the
right
upper
hand's the
line?
treble clef.
So that'll be the upper line.
Yep.
So the upper line is on your right hand, and the
lower
left hand is the lower line.
Now, here's something interesting about how your brain works.
Yeah.
This side of your brain controls...
The right side of your brain.
This hand.
Controls your left hand.
This side of your brain controls...
And the left side of your head controls your
the right
hand.
side. Yeah.
It's interesting because you're miming this, and I'm speaking it because we have to do that for a podcast.
What other questions would you ask me about, like playing the guitar?
Well, hold on, let's go back earlier. Yeah. So, what was the first album that you owned? And was it on? It was on vinyl, right?
Yeah, you're gonna laugh. It was Elvis Presley, and it was called "Separate Ways."
Was the album?
That was the name of the album.
Separate Ways.
The title track from the album.
And it was a record, right?
Right, and the big hit on there was called "Suspicious Minds."
Was that the big vinyl or the small vinyl?
Oh, it was a big one. It was an LP.
It was an LP.
Yeah, and I bought it at...
The other ones are EPs? No.
The small ones is a 45.
See, LP is for long play, right? And then EP is extended play.
Right. Well, back when we were kids, you could buy individual songs with an A and B side that you put on a 45 turntable.
45
RPMs, right. And the big vinyls were 33.5 RPMs.
The bigger one spins slower.
Yep.
I had a table. I actually, the first time I think I heard music was on a record player at home. And it's kind of funny because I'm 31 and it's 2017. So, there was definitely newer technology at that time. But my parents still had that. Yeah, and the table, you could switch the table from 45 RPM to 33 RPM.
Yes, that's how it was. And guess what there was also, too, when I was a kid? They used to make records. They were 78 RPMs.
Oh, that's crazy.
So if you turned it down, like the Chipmunks. Remember the Chipmunks?
Yeah, you turned...
Okay, they were all baritone singers, but you're playing... if you slowed it down, the RPMs, there was all a bunch of baritone singers who they just...
So they had deep voices.
Yes.
But they just sped it up, the original Chipmunks.
So when I'd take my turntable, put a 45 on it, and then turn it to 33.5, then you could hear the regular low voices.
Oh, yeah, you'd be slowing down a small one.
Yes.
Yeah, because I used to do that. I would put a record on. I'd put a big record on.
Right.
Which would be a 33 RPM.
Right.
But I'd click the record player to play at 45. So it'd be playing too fast. So it would be sped up.
You could do it either way. Yeah, it was fun.
My mom would just...
Me and my brother just would laugh so hard when we listened.
But dude, I think I broke the needles a lot on it.
Yeah, that can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the little tone arm is called the stylus.
And then I think there was a point where I broke it, and then she couldn't... my mom couldn't find...
Those cartridges were expensive for those needles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of crazy expensive.
So the first really good stereo Mom had, that's what I listened to all my first songs on. And it all started with, believe it or not, Elvis Presley. And you're going to laugh when I tell you I had Donny Osmond records.
Donny Osmond. So he and his wife did like a variety show, right?
Well, he had a band too, the Osmonds, with all of his brothers.
And then what was the show called?
Well, the Donnie and Marie show is what you're talking
Donnie and
about.
Marie show, yeah.
But they were on, like, they would have, the Osmonds would be on, like, a variety show called The Osmonds.
So you know what's crazy is people, like, anybody that's, like, especially younger than me, but a lot of people that are even my age, like, I only know about the Osmonds because I watched some documentary about it. You know?
Right.
So, like, a whole shit ton of people that are going to be listening to this
Yes.
won't even know, like, what the Osmonds are, you know? And it's almost like when you say, like, what are the Osmonds? And you're kind of like, well, do you know about the Jacksons? You know? It's kind of like, they were kind of like the White Jacksons, sort of.
Okay, so
As a family, because they were a family group that sang and performed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their dad was very hard on them, too. Very hard on them.
Jacksons he was a
Their father,
tough guy, too, wasn't he?
Their father was mean. He was a mean guy, and he used to beat his wife and cheat on her. And he made those kids...
that was in a period of time where that was acceptable.
Those
where, like,
kids...
you could, like, beat your wife and, like, nobody, like, made a big deal about it.
He ran him into the ground. He's like, no, if you want to make it, all of you are going to have choreography. You're all going to have to learn how to play instruments. And, you know, part of the reason that Michael Jackson actually...
ABC, it's easy as 1, 2, 3.
He said that he missed his childhood because he was so busy learning to dance and sing and touring.
Dude, almost all, like, childhood actors say that, you know, that, that their childhood is taken away from them.
Right.
It's kind of like knowing what childhood actors and performers go through.
Precisely.
It's amazing that it's even allowed anymore.
Well, yeah,
You know, it's
that
almost
too.
like, you
That
know,
too.
like it should be like, why? Maybe there shouldn't be children in movies. You know, like
It did
unless it's
screw
like
a lot of kids up.
documentary, you know,
Yeah.
they should just. It basically. It's kind of weird because it's like, you know, like I definitely think, like, you know, people should be able to do what they want and blah blah blah.
Right.
The economy and all that. You know, like I'm all about that, but like at the same time, it's kind of like, holy shit, like having like kids not in movies at all would probably be like a good thing.
Very good, yeah.
Maybe.
So what else would you ask me about my early startings as a musician?
So you had they probably had a pretty upbeat album, I would bet, the Osmonds.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
My favorite song was
How
called...
old were you when you got those first
10.
albums? You were 10?
Yes.
Okay, and then in 2 years' time, you've decided your mind is set on getting
a bass guitar for Christmas, yeah.
Like, what made you want to get a bass?
Because guitar seemed a little bit like too complicated, and having to know the notes or having to try to figure out how to play 6 strings versus 4. So on the bass, these first 4 strings are tuned the same way. It's E, A, D, and G.
And you just have 4 strings on a bass.
Yeah. But then later on they came out with the 5-string bass, where you get an either lower string called the B string, the low B, which gives us that really cool, makes your chest move rumbling when you crank that son of a gun up. And when I plug into the PA with a 5-string and I hit that low B open, it's such a low frequency. It just it'll make
reverberates like
it'll
in
make your
chests.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy instrument.
Go sit first row with some bass player that's playing a 5, and when he hits that low B in an open position, which is just like that, I mean, it's low. Boom. Boom. Yeah. And my keyboard player can recreate that same low B on his keyboard in the group I'm in. So if both of us are doing that B between the bass and the keyboard, I mean, it's thundering. Yeah. It's almost kind of scary. But you know
exactly
what
you mean.
Here's the deal with the 5-string bass. You use that low B somewhat sparingly every now and then. You don't saturate every song with that low B, or it kind of gets a muddy sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the real famous bass guitarist? My name is Mud Scuzzlebud.
That would be Lister Les Claypool.
Yeah. So he
I met him.
Does he flood the B, would you say?
Not always.
No.
He's really good at slapping.
My name is Mud.
Yeah, the one that
Scuzzlebud.
and that's a technique where you go down and up in the same stroke, and then you pop with your middle finger.
Oh, really?
So it took me a long time to get good at that.
That's a tough one, but you can emulate it.
I'm good at it.
You got it.
Yeah, right. I use it in the songs that I play with my group.
Yeah,
a couple of them.
Shit, dude.
And they think it sounds neat.
I need to go. I wonder if I've seen you live.
I want you to come to my recording studio, dude. I would love for you to come.
Yeah.
And just watch a practice.
Dude,
I guarantee you would love it. It's every Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe I could come by and shoot some video too.
With his permission.
Yeah, with his.
Well, we have.
No, my purpose would be to try to produce something for your guys' band. Is what
we have a producer named Brother Rob.
Yeah.
A lot of groups know him, and a lot of groups use him. He produced our YouTube videos, and he was responsible for filming every one of the songs that we have posted. And if you looked at those real carefully, you noticed there was a camera above the drummer.
Yeah.
And then 2 more cameras, 2 side views, and he ran all the sound, and we did it at a club out of I-70.
Dude, that's some pretty serious setup.
He's smart.
A lot of people denigrate the people on the side of the stage. We just don't think of them as doing stuff that's
the behind the scenes.
Doing that sort of stuff is terribly complex. Lately, I've been working on videotaping myself, and I've got a young baby, so we shoot a lot of video for that. Or I'm trying to, and I'm trying to get into it, and I review what I do, and sometimes I'm just gosh, man, I know what I need to do now. But I have a new appreciation for videographers, dude. That's some serious work.
So my first live performances as a bass player were at parties.
Yeah.
Friday night, somebody would get a keg of beer and I'd throw a party, at their house.
Damn.
And sometimes the parents would permit it, and sometimes we'd have to be kind of secretive about where the party was going to be.
Wait till somebody goes out of town.
We'd hand out flyers, and a lot of times.
Were you doing that in high school?
Yeah, a lot of times we would start the party, and then the police would show up and cut us off and say, "That's it."
Yeah.
And if we have to come back, we're going to confiscate your instruments. So.
Well, that's a good deterrent right there.
Yeah,
all right, so we have to take a break, but we'll be right back.
Starting to play music.
Yeah, so back to influences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
after I got away from the kind of lollipop Osmonds songs, maybe, and the Elvis Presley I listened to, that was very, very early when I was 12, 10, 11, 12. Then luckily, my mother loves a lot of the classic rock bands that I love. And my mom had just a whole bunch of albums. My mom turned me on to bands like the Moody Blues. She turned me on to bands like Yes. She turned me on to Santana. She turned me on to Carole King and Carly Simon. All these great players from the 70s that my mom just loved.
Yeah.
Cat Stevens was another one.
Cat Stevens is good.
So, yeah.
I've heard some Cat Stevens.
Right, so these are some of my early influences that were brought to me because my mom liked a lot of cool music and a lot of variety. Now, she wasn't really a country fan or whatever. She liked the classic rock from the late 60s and the 70s. So I started listening to these bands. And then I started in these garage bands, and we would try to emulate our heroes that were guys that we grew up on. And eventually, I remember after Mom brought home some Yes albums and some of those other classic rock albums or whatever, then the first real hard rock album I ever bought was Led Zeppelin 4.
I don't think, when I think of bass, I don't think that there's bass in classic rock. Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe dude, think about how ignorant I am.
Your ears
dude, I don't
just
even
don't
know
pick
that.
it out like
for some
mine
reason,
do.
I thought bass came in later. I don't know.
There's been bass players
in classic rock through and through.
Jazz, all the way back to all the way back to swing. But back then, those guys played upright basses, and they just would mic the bass.
So
and you get a real
a
pure tone. It's very raw and pure when you're playing an upright bass.
I just don't feel like I've heard the My name is Mud, like that deep bass there. Like, when I heard that at first, I was like, have I even heard this in other songs? But I don't know, man. Like, I'm somewhat, like,
it's there, but you got to train your ear to listen for it. So when I hear a song, now, because I'm a bass player, of course I'm hearing the bass track. That's what I want to listen to.
Yeah.
That's what I challenge myself to try to learn.
Isn't that weird how, like, I don't know, like, sometimes you can just listen to music and just, like, not really focus on it. It can just be something that just goes through you.
What are you training your hearing to hear?
Yeah, but then once you start, like, listening, like, dude, sometimes, like, lyrics in songs and how people say things to make it go, to work, especially in pop music, because that's, like, working with, like, a formula.
Right. So,
you know?
Years and years and years of playing the bass, the one thing that was really hard for me to do was to split my concentration to where I could play a song and sing it at the same time. And now I can do that. And it takes a ton of practice to be able to sing and play. And what'll happen is some songs, the same accents on the chords are going to be the same inflection on the way the lyrics are written. Other songs, not so true. So now all of a sudden, you've got a rhythm that's different than the flow of the words coming out of your mouth.
So then it's like the thing where you're like rubbing your head in a circle and patting your stomach at the same time.
That's precisely it. Can you walk and chew gum?
Right. Can you walk and chew gum?
So it took
Come on, boy. Can't you walk and chew gum?
It took me years and years and years to be able to not
walk and chew gum at the same time?
not lose my place in the song when I'm trying to sing with it.
It took me years.
It's
weird, like how that's come up a couple times in our conversation already. We were talking about how, like, a musician is doing double when they're playing a piano.
Right.
You know, they're reading two things, like double processes. And then talking about, like, singing while playing the guitar. And then, like, so there's kind of, like, it's almost like moving, like, when you said, like, that a song and the lyrics can go together. So you're kind of, like, moving left in both aspects, sort of, but sometimes the music goes left, and the vocals go right, and then it's like you're like
precisely.
Yeah, I guess that's a way of putting it.
Yeah, it's a way of phrasing it, but
there's similarities.
Okay, so here's the other thing. Now, when you get on a stringed instrument, it's still the same difference, because this side of my brain's got to run this hand. And this side of my brain's got to run my strumming or picking hand. So you're still getting that little crossover. And now we're
going to guitar anyways.
And now we're going to put a vocal line on top of it. So my brain's running this hand, my brain's running this hand, and my brain's saying, this is where the words have to go.
Maybe harpists sound so beautiful because they're only like, don't they only pluck, right? But they do use both hands plucking.
Yep.
A harpist.
That's a very.
Is it hard to play?
Oh, dude, are you kidding me? Look at all the strings.
What?
Look at all the strings on the harp.
Easy.
The tuning would blow your mind.
Dude, that's how sexist I am. In my mind, the only women that you think of, like, the only instrument that I think of that I'm like, oh, that's a women's instrument, is a harp, right? And I immediately think it must be very easy to play. That's how.
It isn't. They're geniuses.
It's not. It's hard.
You know what they say? One of the most.
I can't believe
one of the hardest instruments to play.
Why?
The French horn.
Oh, the French horn.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying the harp is, but the harp is one of the hardest.
It's not easy. And then when we start talking about a violin, the tuning is exactly the opposite. Now the lower string on the violin is the G. The next lowest string is a D. And then that string is an A, and that string is an E. So the completely thing is inverted. Same with the mandolin. So you take everything you've ever learned about playing either chords or a scale or whatever on a guitar, you might as well just throw it in the trash, because you got to figure out how to invert the whole thing.
There's so much to translate.
The fingering is different.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to play a mandolin or a violin.
I would have to think that, like, playing any stringed instrument is kind of like, I wouldn't say that it's like riding a bike. I mean, I guess, but there's so many different stringed instruments, and like, I guess there is variety of bicycles and difficulty of riding them, but it varies much more than between like bicycles. It's like,
you know how long it took me, how many years it took me to be able to do John Paul Jones's bass licks for his Led Zeppelin songs.
Was that like one of the first things that you learned?
No, I started out with 3-chord ditties, and
but was that like one of like the more complete songs that you?
Those songs are there's so much more involved, and there's so much more structure to them.
Yeah,
they're very difficult, but once you kind of develop your ear, and there was another group I played in where the guitar.
How long did it take you? I guess
to become a good bass player?
No, to play that song you were talking about. You were just talking.
Oh, okay. So
how long it took me to play.
Okay, well, a specific example would be a Led Zeppelin song, and to really get it in my hip pocket, probably 6 months.
And that's now. Like, what if you wanted to learn how to play a different song that's like really complex now? Is it 6 months still, or can you learn faster?
Way faster.
Yeah. How fast would you say it is now compared to what was?
Okay, when I walked into the studio with the Broad Street Band, there's no more covers. It's all original. So all of a sudden, I'm looking at a list of 40 songs I've never heard in my life. And
Holy shit!
About a year later, I had them all in my head. And I started out with cheat sheets.
So you had to you had to do that. You had to learn all of these songs. Yeah. And like what's crazy is whatever you're doing. Like, everybody knows this when I say it. It's like the most obvious thing in the world. Whatever you're doing, your brain is constantly getting better at doing that. So whatever it is, if that's watching TV, your brain gets better at watching TV. If that's playing the guitar and learning a new song and learning every single note of that song and learning how to play that on the guitar, like every time. So like that first song that you learned, maybe it took. I don't know how long it took you to
couple
get
of weeks
down.
To start making it sound good.
Yeah,
and probably 6 months to a year.
But after you got
not have to look at a cheat sheet to know what notes were to put my fingers on the fretboard.
Okay.
So once I started to look at my cheat sheets, where I'd write down, okay, this is E, A, B, C, D, F, G, sharps and flats, and Skip would name out all the chords for me. And at that point in my life, I did learn the notes on the bass. Yeah. So if he says F, I know right where to put my finger.
Right.
So after Skip would walk me through drawing out a cheat sheet, I kept a folder with all the songs. When I'd go to band practice, I'd say, what are we playing next? I'd put the sheet up. I'd look at the notes, and then I practiced turning the cheat sheet over and see if I got it up here.
Yeah.
And that's how it happened.
And that's kind of how you built your memorization of all the songs.
A lot of practice, dude.
And once you got through learning 30 of those 40 songs, you were like, you develop a system.
Yes.
You know what you're doing, but your natural talents of memorizing, you probably noticed got a lot better. I imagine probably by the end of that process of learning all those songs, your cheat sheets were probably a lot more brief.
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't have to use them no more.
Oh, so you practiced using them.
Turn the dang thing over and see if I got it here.
Right.
And if I didn't, I'd go, okay, well, I don't quite have that one in my hip pocket. And the next time I play it, I'd be looking at it again.
Yeah.
Until it went from looking at it on paper to stored in my brain.
That's a huge undertaking. 40 songs, dude.
I was in a group one time.
What a serious thing. I'm not a musician. I've never been in a band. I've never even really been close to anybody, I guess, besides you, that's been in a band. But the perils of from the outside, I always think oh, so and so left the band, whatever. I didn't think of it as oh fuck, if somebody leaves a band, it's oh my god. So what are they going to do? They're going to go and learn all new music. To go and join some other band.
Yeah, and it's the same thing when
the
you
amount
lose,
of it's actually a lie that I have been close to some people that have been in bands, the guys that used to play Evanescence.
Yeah, I know who that is. Yeah,
that band broke off and now it's Machina or something like that.
Okay.
So, like, I got to know those guys kind of well, but, like, I didn't talk to them much. I didn't, like, really get too close to them to hear, like, you know, but I know that she fired him at some point, or they quit, or whatever. They had a falling out, and I'm like, you know, and then they're, like, working, like, you know, like, the bar that I met them at was a tiny little grungy bar in Aurora.
And
it's, like, going from playing fucking arenas...
Sure.
To going back to playing that and just like, and they're just trekking on, you know, and they're like been in the limelight, and it's just like, you know, that's like the true love of music. Like when you see like a band that's like been broken like that.
Yes.
You know, and then like hopefully they go on and do their own shit without like
a lot of times it happens.
You know,
or like, these groups go like this, and then they go, well, let's put it back together again. Let's get all our original guys.
These guys were playing for Evanescence, so they're playing for the machine, you know, for the man, for the record company, you know, and I'm sure like they probably like were like gave the finger to that at a certain point. You're like, fuck that, I'm not gonna play for some pop stars, like let's make some real fucking music and like do our shit, you know.
A lot of the groups that I listen to, including, you know, we were talking about Led Zeppelin, and I really like Jimmy Page on the guitar. He started out actually in some other groups before they formed Led Zeppelin, and he was always also a session musician for like Tom Jones. He played all the studio tracks for these Tom Jones albums, and nobody really knows that, but I do.
That's fine.
Because the thing about the music and the stuff that I like, my mind constantly wants to know, where did this guy come? Where did he learn his licks or his chops?
Yeah.
So Jimmy Page started out. He was in a group called the Yardbirds.
Dude, did you hear about the controversy about Stairway to Heaven?
Yes, I know what it is.
You listen to that song that they alleged...
My Sweet Satan, yeah.
But they... No,
you play it backwards.
No, it's alleged that they stole that intro, that intro riff into Stairway of Heaven.
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, and so the guy... ultimately, Jimmy Page won. But when you hear that other song, it's like, holy moly!
It's spooky that there's...
And it's the band that he worked with before. It's a band that toured with them. I think they opened for this other band.
Okay.
And that band never really made it anywhere. And,
right.
And he definitely like you know, for some reason he played that song, and whether or not he, you know, when he composed that, if he knew that he was like ripping it off, or, you know, like, do we hear stuff that gets absorbed into your brain, and like plagiarism happens all the time. Does. And dude, I honestly think that like information travels like Wi-Fi from us, like from one person to another. Like some knowledge like goes like through like, I don't know, like some other realm or some shit. Beats me, but
well, that's true. And what you want to do is if you do that, and you like, especially if you re-record somebody else's song, you've got to give them credit on your credits on your album.
Yeah,
you do.
Covering.
And then you're not plagiarizing because you're giving the original artist credit where credit is due.
Dude, for some reason this thought popped into my head before we started recording.
Yes.
Dude, I fucking love Johnny Cash.
Like, so do I. I'm not a really big time country music fan, but that's one cat that I do like.
You know, he covered a Nine Inch Nails song, a Trent Reznor song.
I've heard it.
Called
Hurt.
That's right. And dude, is Hurt one of the like? It is one of the. It's got to be one of the best songs. It is sad. It's a very sad song.
Because he didn't live much longer after he recorded those.
And I think that song is partially about like heroin abuse. You know?
Yeah, and Johnny had his problems too.
Yeah,
with prescription.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Yeah, and so, you know, he Johnny covered it, but he changed the lyrics. He changed the lyrics in just like one or two places, and Trent Reznor gave it like, you know, his blessing, his blessing and full approval. You know,
sure.
I mean, can you imagine being Trent Reznor and it's like, oh, Johnny Cash wants to cover
my song? I would be honored.
Songs Johnny Cash has written in his life?
Oh, plenty,
dude. Like 5,800. That's what I heard. That's what I've read. That he's written 5,800 songs.
Okay, so one of my favorite Johnny Cash songs, even though I'm not really a country guy, is called One Piece at a Time. And it's a story about a guy that worked in a automobile manufacturing plant, and every day he took a part home in his lunchbox and built a car. And it's called One Piece at a Time.
That's really funny, dude.
Sorry we had Maud there with a little background for you. So, yeah, I would say about the time I started listening to Led Zeppelin, I started to fall in love with these really great guitar players. Jeff Beck, I have a lot of respect for. He's one of my faves too. Eric Clapton. Those are my three guitar gods. And my numero uno influence is James Marshall Hendrix, or as you know, I'm Jimi Hendrix. And if you look around the room, we're in the house of Hendrix, Daddy.
Dude. So, you're my neighbor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we live in the same
Well, I'm not
building.
just your neighbor, I'm your friend.
Yeah, and my friend.
Yeah.
But for the listeners, so this makes sense. So there's some supporting storyline. You know, like when I moved in here, I would go outside to like take my trash out, and I would hear the Jimi Hendrix Jimi Hendrix version of the national anthem from Woodstock.
That's
right?
Precisely where that's what I watched,
right?
And I learned it without watching the video.
But I'm like, you know, you live like on the third floor, and you know, like, so I'm walking on ground level, and I hear, you know, like, I know the song, you know, it's like the bombs bursting in air, and like the crazy guitar work that goes into that, like that has to be one of the most difficult guitar pieces. But I heard it being played, and I was like, God damn, this is what I thought. I was like, whoever lives up there has a really, really good stereo, because here I am at ground level, and it sounds like it's live.
It's that third?
Because it was live. Because it's you up here, and like I've heard you play it like maybe 5 or 6 times. Like I've heard it being played like usually like on a Sunday at around like 11 a.m. or so.
So out of respect for my neighbors,
because you crush it. Like you had me convinced. And then I think one time I was out there and I heard you mess up and stop.
Yeah.
Or you.
And then you realized, yes.
And I was like, holy shit, he's actually playing. But like at that time I had already spoken to you about it and stuff.
Oh, right.
I think I knew you better at that point. But I was like,
so how I really got that in my brain was just doing it over and over and over and over. I mean, I started playing that song years ago, and I could never get all the song here.
Yeah.
And I'm still not that good at it, but enough to make it sound kind of... Yeah, because there's some stuff he does, too. I want to learn how to do the ambulance like he does with his whammy bar. Like the European ambulance.
Dude, it's... I mean, you know, it's funny, like, people will debate, like, who's the best guitarist, you know?
Right.
And, like, some people are like, oh, definitely Hendrix, and then, you know, like, I always kind of, like, I've always thought the G3...
Oh, I loved that.
You know, setup, so that was like, what is that? That's like an event, right? The G3...
No, it's actually 3 super... guitar players
right,
that tour together.
They tour. It's the G3 tour is what it would be called, right?
So the band plays, the other band plays, the other band plays.
Dude, like, it's so funny. Like, you know how many people have no idea about the G3 tour? Dude.
One of my favorite guys in that is Steve Vai.
And he's normally in it, right?
Yeah, there's usually 3 super...
Well, George Satriani, is that his name?
Joe
Satriani.
Joe Satriani, yeah.
Who a lot of people consider him to be, like, you know... I think there's a lot of votes for him being the best ever in his box, you know. There's a lot in Hendrix's box as well.
Okay, so
you know,
I'm going to make a comment about what you just said because this is very important and I think it's true.
Yeah.
So there was guys that paved the way for that style of guitar playing. And if you look at your Satrianis, your Van Halens, without guys that experimented with distortion and using that tremolo to bend notes, there would never be those other guitar players. So to me, Jimi Hendrix was very instrumental on that
developing
style.
That wow, that sound.
Whatever it might be. There's also
the whammy bar, right?
Yeah, or they call it a tremolo.
But so tremolo is actually probably more of like
it bends the bridge and it makes the notes either climb or dive.
Which is, dude, it's like coolest sound, isn't it?
Why do you think I wanted to emulate it?
Dude, why is an electric guitar so fucking cool? It's just like, dude, if people came here from another planet and they saw like a dude riffing on a guitar, dude, like going like Van Halen on stage, you know, with like the pointy guitar, electric guitar. You would see that and be like, oh, this is what fucking awesome is.
So Van Halen.
If that alien asked you like, what's awesome, and you would point to the picture of like Van Halen on stage playing the guitar, like riffing, and being like, remember that? And they're like, yeah, that's what awesome is. Like,
yeah, because it'll stick in your mind because you'll say to yourself,
dude, it's iconic.
I can't believe what I'm seeing.
The real
this
thing.
Guy do with his hand and what's coming out of that amplifier.
Who was that? What was her name? Jet.
Joan Jett.
Joan Jett?
Yeah.
What do you think of Joan Jett?
Joan Jett and the Blackhearts were a great band. And Joan Jett got her start in a different group with some other girls players.
Is that right?
Yeah.
She was like, what was that, like the 80s? Is that when her peak of her career was?
I think the start of what she was doing when she was in the Runaways was like late 70s, early 80s.
Dude, like if you look at a picture of Joan Jett in like her full leather jumpsuit, her black leather jumpsuit with her dark black hair.
You mean back in the day or now?
Like back in the day, you know, with her crazy ass hair.
She's a naughty girl.
If you go on Google and look at pictures of her, it's just like she's iconic, you know. She's kind of like the chick version of Kiss.
You know who else I like from back in the day? A girl singer, guitar player. Chrissy Hine from the Pretenders.
I have no idea who that is.
I got to meet her. I worked her show at Fiddler's Green.
Oh, really?
I used to be a stagehand. Did I tell you that?
No.
I used to work all these venues around town.
Yeah?
Yeah. I had my day job.
Really cool, dude.
And then what they do is, like if the show was on a weekend, you go in the morning. You set everything up. They feed you breakfast first. You eat. You set everything up. You unload all the trucks. You put it all together, dude. And then you get to go and take a little break. You come back. You can stand anywhere you want, backstage, whatever. You get to watch the whole show. And when it's over, it's time to break it out and load it out. And we're talking...
It's a lot of work.
30, 40 guys. So, you know what? I worked a show, and it's not one of my bands that I really care to listen to. For the Spice Girls, they had 5 semis.
So they...
And 3 Jumbotrons.
Did they have all the imaging on all of the trailers, too? That said it was like the Spice Girls?
They don't put nothing on a semi that says the band's name.
Isn't that crazy?
Now, the tour buses do it, but their equipment is not on that, because then people want to go, oh, well, let's go bust into that thing and steal it.
Yeah, then you have to, like, have security and shit.
Yeah, so the trucks don't get labeled like that.
We just like, dude, think about it, like, you know, like back in the day, you know, like the carnival would come to town and everybody in town would see them like coming on the dirt road.
I used to see
you rolling in.
There used to be one.
That's what's happening with the rock shows.
Before they tore down Southland Mall and built the streets of Southland, there was a carnival there every year called the Ray Kamek Show. And they had, it's bigger than life on the side of all their semis. But I remember specifically looking at my watch when we had to do the loadout for the Spice Girls, and that's 5 semis. They even had their own catering semi.
Oh, my God.
Because some bands don't want to eat the catering there. So me and about 40 guys got that entire show, broke down and into those trailers in 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Was the catering semi, was that like something that like you didn't pack stuff into?
They had their own barbecues. They had all their own food.
I mean, that would be set up ready to go at any time, right? That they wouldn't be packing
stuff. It starts
stuff,
in the morning, yeah.
But they wouldn't be packing stuff in there.
These musicians would get there the night before and they'd wake up and they'd want to eat. So I got to eat with a lot of musicians too.
Think about that Spice Girl money. Oh my gosh.
3 Jumbotrons? 5 semis?
Dude.
You know what happened at the very end of the Spice Girls show? I was responsible for running a cord they call the Snake that sends all the cables for all the lighting, all the microphones, every amp that might be lined in or mic'd. All that goes in this tube. One of them's the tube. Then there's another one that just gets taped to the ground with gray duct tape.
Yeah.
So my responsibility that night was to take all that tape off, roll that cable up from the stage to the sound pit at Fiddler's Green. And when I was down there breaking that thing down, I busted my tail, and I looked down. There's a $20 bill tip on the ground.
Was there?
There wasn't a tip. Somebody dropped it.
Somebody just dropped $20?
Yes.
Oh, dude. That's where you can find money, man. You can find money outside.
So I want to tell you about a couple other shows, and this is a huge part of what...
Dude, that cable must have been like wrestling, that sort of a cable.
It's about that big around, dude.
So it wasn't terrible, but I mean, it's still a hell of a task. It's like an inch diameter.
These is a big cable.
Yeah.
Then the lighting trusses, those were interesting too, because what they would have was they have what they call motor boxes, and that particular venue is equipped with lighting trusses. Okay, so these guys, they climb ropes up into the ceiling, and they're responsible for hooking up all of the speakers and all the lights that go to all those cables to go to that soundboard.
That's so crazy. That's so even the
I'm gonna
all
explain
the
to you
lights and everything needs to go. That goes with them.
All goes back to where the soundboard is, because you're going to have another guy on a lighting board.
Yeah, but no, I'm saying like so when the Spice Girls came, they brought their own.
They have all their own gear.
And so they have to run all that shit up.
And then they hire local stagehands. That's what I was, a local stagehand.
Dude, I didn't realize. I would think that they would have like the same lighting that they would keep for like all the shows at the venue.
They do. They have cases for all their lights.
Yeah.
And they have what they call a motor box, which is the craziest thing you've ever seen. So when those riggers go up to wire the stuff to the lighting trusses,
which are like at
they tie these ropes off, and then they use big old heavy duty hooks with chains to attach it to the lighting truss, and then they have this feed, and you wire all the speakers in series. And have you ever seen just like a giant tower that's suspended? It's not stacked on the ground, it's in the air. Some of them are curved like this, some of them are just straight up and down. Those motor boxes is how you hoist each speaker one at a time. And you got one column, maybe another column. So there might be 3 chains on either side of the stage that you run these motor boxes. And the motor boxes,
and like hoist the stuff up.
They have a motor in it.
Well, first of all, the lighting truss is like basically like a cylinder that's like.
So it's got a gear drive thing that you run the chain through. So when you've got this little control in your hand, one speaker goes up, then you grab the chain and you run it through the next speaker. And there's like a little gear that makes the speaker climb the chain.
That's so crazy.
So by the time you got both sides set up, now they're gonna sound down all of the cables that get wrapped through the trusses that hold all of the speakers with all the information for those articulating lights that spin around like this, and it's all controlled through a PC. The program is pre-programmed.
Set all that shit up.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to the next town, and then the next stagehands, which are mostly like
they've
music.
Got some of
Would you say most people that like work in that field are like music enthusiasts? Like,
yeah.
I think most of them play instruments, and
a lot of them do, but some of them don't.
Some of them don't,
no.
But a lot of them are just like die hard. Like you love music, and you want it. Like, you'll do like anything to even be just involved in it.
Back then you got paid cash. They'd give you an envelope at the end of the night, and you usually always got a T-shirt in the show you worked, and they would feed you. You could sit down and eat with the performers.
Yeah,
because the catering thing is
they appreciate you guys tremendously.
We work hard.
Like they better, right? And I mean, I think that I'm sure that there's there's
some weak links there that don't really kind of when they're new, they kind of don't know the system.
Yeah,
because there's a system, especially with the people that load the trucks. You'll have cabinets that roll off the truck, then end up on those motor boxes that get hoisted in the air. But you're going to have speaker cabinets too, and the soundboard's usually in a big old casing, and they're all on wheels. So they come off the truck, they get put on the dock, they get set in place, and the whole thing comes together. And then it's showtime, You watch the show, and then you go back down, and it's time to clean it all up, put it in the truck.
Tear it out.
Dude, it's a hell of an endeavor.
Dude, it's crazy.
I did it
trade shows are like that.
I've done some trade shows too for that same company.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, like, I worked a trade show
Home
recently.
and garden show or something like that. I've done those. And everybody's got their vehicles, vans, whatever they want to set up all their booths and shit.
But they do the same thing. They show up and they'll have all of that metal piping and crap to build the stands. And it's kind of funny because it's like, why doesn't, like, you would think that the venue, because there's so many trade shows and all of these trade shows that travel and hoist their own gear around.
Yes.
You know, and basically they use a lot of fuel and expense to hoist this shit around.
Sure.
Why don't these venues, like, they should probably, like, set it up where, like, the venue
some places
has, like, this
have
equipment.
what they call a house PA.
Yeah.
And some house lighting. But if this group says, well, you know, we appreciate that you have this, but we're using our stuff, then they bring it in.
And we're renting the whole space, and we get to bring all of our own shit in.
And
I can see why it wouldn't work for music, but it would work for those trade shows, man. Because, I mean, like, the Home and Garden Show uses the same equipment as the jewelry convention, as the
I forgot to mention
auto
too,
convention.
Along with that envelope full of cash for your hard efforts, they always had cases of beer for the crew after the show. But by that time, it'd be like 2 in the morning, and if you had a day job,
yeah, right, you know,
you just broke down a show that lasted till 10:30, and some of those shows we couldn't load. Everybody has to really click to load that many trucks at one time.
And you're like, oh, well, I'll just hang out and just have one.
If it's a couple of semis, nobody really gets in a hurry. You're already tired, especially if you set the show up, and then you have to break it down.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have to be to work at 7 in the morning, and it's 2. So you might drink one beer and take one home, and you want to be careful going home at 2 in the morning, you know?
Or if you're young and crazy, you're like, oh, I'll just hang out and just have like one or two, and you're like, and then you have a couple drinks, and you're like, this girl that worked the show with me, she's looking pretty fine.
I did all that.
And then you wind up like taking her home, and then like 7 o'clock rolls around, and you're like, well, I'm still awake, and then you just go off to work the next day.
I never met any girls that went home with me when I was a stagehand. They want the musicians, not you.
Yeah.
Can you introduce me? Can you get me backstage? That's what I would get all the time.
Right?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure.
And then Mike Lanny, he worked for a company, and it was the one that got all the stagehands for fiddlers. And he was a cool cat. So there'd be times when I'd call up and I'd say, hey, man, you got enough guys for this show? Because I'd really like to see it. He goes, I'm full. And I go, dude, if I come to the trailer with my passes from Pyre shows where they'll let me ride in through security because they know I'm a stagehand, can you give me a wristband so I can watch this concert? So I took 2 friends with me to Metallica.
Yeah?
He gave us all wristbands, man.
Dude. That's the in there, dude.
Yeah, it was, too. And then I was allowed to go back through the door, and I could get my friends sodas or waters or whatever for free.
Dude.
Yeah, they're just
that's
like,
where it's
whoa,
at.
No way.
But, I mean, that happens everywhere, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it really does.
Yeah, so I did other venues, too. I worked used to be the Mammoth.
The Mammoth? Is that here in...
It's on Colfax, but it's not called the Mammoth anymore.
Oh, what's it called in this?
I'm trying to remember the new name for it. It was the Mammoth back in the day, and now it's the Fillmore.
The Fillmore?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I also worked a lot of shows at the Ogden Theater.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That was a fun place to work a show, yeah.
It's a small theater, but it's...
You know, it was cool, too, is Mike Lanny was the dude at all those different venues. So if there was a band in town and I wasn't picked to work the show...
Yeah.
All I gotta do is go ask for Mike Lanny, and I'm in.
Took it up.
Yeah, I took 4 friends to go see what were they called? 3 Eye Blind. Do you remember them? That's kind of old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They had that one song, do 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 do.
Dude, do you think like the age of like do you listen to the music that's coming out now, like from like these new artists?
I do hear it, selectively. I'll turn that on for a little while.
You work in an environment where that plays, but
that's King Soopers.
Yeah.
At night, sometimes they play the new artists. During the day, it's pretty mainstream.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a lot of classic rock and some country and nothing that's real too edgy. And then, like, once it gets to be like 9:30, then the new bands come on. Yeah.
It's funny, man. The other day, I was like, it was crazy funny because I go to your guys' King Soopers,
right?
And I'm walking around at night, and I hear Ashley Simpson, her song "Pieces of Me," which is like a pop song. It's like a total crap song, right?
Yeah. And then the next song,
I made it like, well, no, like the thing is, like I recognize that song. I like heard it, and I was like, oh, I know what song this is. This is, and like the funny thing was, it was like earlier that day, for some reason, I was thinking about Ashley Simpson, and I was like,
oh, okay,
yeah.
So
I saw her in the news.
If you wouldn't mind, we'll go ahead and take another short break so I can get something else.
You just showed me a video of you playing guitar, which was pretty impressive. It was a 6-string Stratocaster.
My first electric.
What riff was that?
It was just a complete improv from my head, outside the box, make it happen, and just do something.
Is it?
Totally, dude. That's nothing I've practiced.
Do you want to play it again? We can play it for the show.
Yeah, that'd be
Let our
fun.
listeners hear it.
Sure. So it needs to be explained that it's not a song. It's just me working on my technique on how to use my whammy bar.
It's you freestyling.
Freestyling and working on my picking technique and the use of the tremolo, or as the other musicians call it, a whammy bar. And you're actually bending the bridge. You're moving it forward.
It makes things like super more complex because you have this whammy bar that you're trying to deal with.
Yeah.
While you're like when you're like, I think probably a lot of people listening to this maybe have like played.
Sure.
There's probably more people listening to this that have played like Guitar Hero.
I had a really good friend that I went to high school with, who I also played in a band with him. He was quite advanced on his guitar, and I used to go, "How do you do that, Dave? How do you make that whammy bar do that?" And he goes, "Sky, it's really not as hard as you think. If you use a little distortion." Oh, and the other thing I love is if you've got that going on with the wah-wah and the whammy like Jimmy did, that is so cool. So Dave described it to me like this. When you grab that whammy bar and you're going through a certain effect, he called them dives and climbs, where you either have a single note or a chord that you've struck. And when you grab that whammy bar and you push it forward, it's going to go low. And then when you grab it and pull it up, it's going to take it up to a high ratio.
So you're going to go wow.
Yeah, or whatever you want to do. Or you can go
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to play this for the fine people that might be listening.
Yeah, I think if we set
And if I set it really close and point the speaker here.
This is actually a really good microphone. I'm like really surprised with it. That could almost be too close.
Okay, we'll back it up.
Do it right there.
Yeah, because it'll distort. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like a Sunday morning, just noodling around on my guitar. Big old smile on my face. Got the day off. Let's lay down a little video. And I set the camera right there on my TV stand and went for it. And look where the whammy's always between my fingers.
Always.
In the very end, I turned it off. That's me. Well, let's say I was influenced that morning. Sometimes
that was a really good riff, dude. I hope it got picked up pretty well. You know what I loved is that your cat. How old is your cat?
18.
18.
And I have videos of her jumping on that keyboard and playing these random notes. It sounds like a horror soundtrack.
That's funny. That is so funny.
And all I have to do
She's a small cat, isn't she?
She used to be even thinner. All I used to have to do is just turn the keyboard on and tap on the keyboard as to have her come up there so I could stroke her. And then you just move your hand from one side to the other and she walks back and forth on the keyboard.
She's like, hey.
And it sounds like a horror track. It's like, cling, bung, jong, ding.
Man, I had a pawn shop for a while back a few years ago.
You owned your own pawn shop?
Sort of. I had a business partner, but it was pretty much mine, but sort of not at the same time. But I had a tiny piano come in. A guy sold me a child's piano.
Yeah.
So it, I wish the name could come to me. I wish I still had it. It was like a 30 key or a 29 key. It's a little teeny thing. It's like this wide. But it was made out of solid wood, and it had faux, like really good faux keys.
Would it happen to be a Hammond B3?
No, it wasn't a Hammond.
Oh.
But it was just like a little tiny piano. It wasn't electric or anything. But I would try to riff on that and produce some pretty terrible noises, I'm sure.
Well, piano's not easy, dude. I'm still not very accomplished on a piano, but I've gotten to where I actually can do a bass line with one hand while I'm doing a treble clef line with the other.
Oh, interesting.
Which is difficult. It is difficult. And then learning all the chords. And if you look at a piano, all the white keys are the whole notes, which would be these where the dots are on a guitar. Okay. And your sharps and flats are between those, and that represents those black keys.
So on the neck of your guitar, you have white dots.
Yeah, those are the whole notes.
Between flats,
there's no sharps and flats on the white dots except for, this is crazy, between B and C, and it depends on where you are on the neck. B and C is only 2 frets, where normally it takes 2 frets to go up a whole step. So there's 2 places on the guitar neck where 1 fret up is a whole step between a whole note. And it occurs between E and F and B and C on the guitar neck. I could easily demonstrate it for you.
Yeah. I mean, like, our viewers won't be able to get it.
Well, they'll understand that I'm only moving my finger up 1 fret. So here's B. Excuse me, B is right here, and C, and then between E and F, like here and here, it's only 1 fret. Everywhere else, it's 2 frets to go up a whole step.
A whole note.
So on the key, remember we were talking.
It's a whole note that you're going from, right?
Yeah, remember we were talking about the
That's so weird.
Keyboard stanza or the music stanza.
Yeah.
Okay, so the lines represents the sharps, or excuse me, the lines represent, and this is how I remember it, every good boy does fine. Those are the lines where the notes are marked on the line, and the spaces are F, A, C, and E.
Right.
So in order for you
this is like coming back to me. I took piano classes, like my mom would pay for them.
So when you sit down and you're looking at those notes on the spaces and lines, middle C is on the actual music stanza, and anything above that, they draw these little lines and they mark the notes higher or lower. Then you know you're going to be up here or down here.
Weird.
And then at the very beginning of any sheet music is going to have a time signature. Most rock and roll is 2/4 or 4/4 time. That means 2 beats for every.
See, it's interesting because there's such.
Did you know how mathematical music is? I could explain it to you right here. If I split the neck exactly in half from here to here, and I move my finger up 1 string to the A string, that's going to be an E, that's going to be an E, that's going to be an A, that's going to be an A, that's going to be a D, that's going to be a D. Then when you go up here, that's B, and then back to a high E. that makes that note and that note the same.
Which is so weird. Like, so how are these notes the same, you know? Isn't that...
It's just the mathematics of the way the neck is built.
Well, and I think it comes down to the frequency of the vibration. That an E...
Well, yeah, because you're going to get quavers that are off.
Well, this
Hear how that sounds wrong?
This deeper note, like this... Like
those are two of the same notes. If I'm off, it's going to quaver. You know, it sort of sounds like what the guy does in Smashing Pumpkins. Ooh, passion. Or whatever that song is.
It's so strange, though, that, like, how... I think the way that we look at music is kind of weird.
So I'm going to show you something else that's mathematical.
I think it's somewhat, like, nonsensical.
This is also mathematical about the guitar. If you move your third finger up 2 frets from this note, which is called the root note, you're going to find the same note here.
It's the same note, but it sounds different.
Because it's played on different spots on the guitar. And then if you drop 7 frets and move down a string, here's the same note again. And here's the same note again. That's called an octave. And that's 8 notes of a major scale, which goes... first and 8th note, thus the word octave, which is 8. So that's octaves and octaves and octaves. You can find the same thing here where you're playing the same note. 6 strings apart, Daddy-o.
It's a funny system, right? Because like you said, you can read music, but kind of not.
I have to sit there with a pencil and look at the notes and write the notes below the stanza, and then learn the chords on a cheat sheet or the individual.
So you don't read music, basically. I mean,
I can read it, but I can't. I can't
read it.
I can't sight read and play at the same time.
You transcribe it.
Do you know how?
Right.
Yeah, that's your transpose is the word.
You're transposing it. You're putting it into a different language.
So these orchestra musicians and stuff you see, they just put the piece of paper in. They've never heard the song before in their life, and they nail it.
Right.
Because they're that trained.
Yeah.
Their ear.
The way that music is written is a very precise thing.
Well, sure it is. And
if you have
know what? Something else I failed to mention to you, too, is like some of these really good hard rock, heavy metal players.
Yeah.
They study classical music to learn their scales to play those crazy leads they do.
Oh, that's crazy. But there's also there's musicians that have been celebrated that have, like, Prince didn't know how to read music, right?
There's a bunch of guys that never
There's a bunch of people that don't. So, like, it's a very funny thing that, like, here you have this system for, writing music and reading music. And I think that there's something that's just bad about it. There's something that just doesn't work so well, you know? I mean, our written language works really well, you know?
If I was
everybody uses it.
If I was more regimented and more of a book-smart, music-reading player that could just sit a piece of music in front of me, I'd be regimented to the point to where, in a way, it sounds too rigid. Learning by ear makes you makes you kind of like, your notes are actually going to be, a lot of it's going to be from what you came up with while you go, well, if I do this, this, and this, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So let's try that on this. Or you're learning somebody's song, you'll sit there trial and error until you get it.
But you use the system.
But once your ears develop, you can tell when you play the wrong note because it's not going to sound right. And then you challenge yourself to going, okay, where did I make that not sound right? Because I didn't put my finger on this fret, or I was playing the wrong chord.
Right.
So when
it's really easy to tell when you're playing piano.
Oh yeah, I mean when it's off, it's off. So I think some of my earliest memories of trying to learn how to be a better bass player and play other people's music is how I got started. I never did covers. I mean, never did originals in the beginning.
Who would? You know,
nobody really does.
This skill of like playing it
so
first.
I played with this group, and we had a kind of a weird name. It was called Amaxis, Amaxis, and we did all like Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and stuff. And that's where here all of a sudden, well, I'd watched the guitar player, my friend, that I went to school with too, and he was a cool cat. He's a big, tall, blonde-haired guy, and he played a Les Paul, Gibson Les Paul. He was a really good guitar player. And
that's an expensive guitar.
Yeah, after I watched him for a while, and I started looking at the structure of how he put his fingers on the frets.
Yeah.
Then I started going, well, okay, what chord are you playing? This is after I started to learn my chords. I never even knew what these notes were even open.
Yeah.
And now I know every note on this entire neck of this guitar.
Which, like, so you're playing when you're playing a note and you're holding multiple strings. You're playing chords, right? Isn't that what that's called?
Right there,
playing chords.
There's your G. There's your D.
And so you're playing chords right now.
C.
Yeah.
G.
G is a really difficult one.
Or excuse me. No, G. G's right there.
G's really weird.
F. F sharp.
Oh.
And B.
I had a guitar and I looked on how to play guitar, and I kind of started trying to learn.
Did it start gathering dust in your closet?
Yeah. The thing is, it's physically taxing. Like it's hard to do.
At first, it's going to make your fingers sore.
You have to push the string so damn hard. It takes a while to get those calloused. And like process of like doing that, like
now I can play at will for as long as I want. My fingers never hurt anymore.
Especially the really small string. That one, like,
you should see what the mandolin strings do to
your finger.
See what the mandolin strings do. They're even smaller.
Oh yeah. So it's like a cutting wire.
And the mandolin has 8 strings. And each time you play a note on a mandolin, you're pushing your finger down on 2 strings to form one note, and one's tuned an octave above the other.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's tuned like a violin as well.
You know what I've got, and maybe I'll have you take a look at this, and if we come up with an idea, we'll maybe videotape us working on it. But it's a little guitar that I have. It's a cigar box guitar.
I've seen them.
I bought one at a garage sale that was like half project done, and put some strings on it. But I'll have to show it to you and let you see if you think there's any hope for it.
This guitar I'm playing tonight for this podcast happens to be a Mitchell, and I'd never heard of Mitchell. And I walked into a small music guitar store right down the street. They had a variety of different 6 strings to try. And I wanted an acoustic, because acoustic's fun and electric's fun too. They're equally as fun, but I can carry this anywhere, and boom, I don't need any chords, no amp.
Right.
It's great to take camping or something,
Yeah.
And this, after all, I tried all these different guitars. This one, believe it or not, was only $159.
It's a good deal, man.
Yeah, and it sounds great, and I've taken really good care of it. I had bought a hard shell case for it.
It's got beautiful wood.
You won't find a scratch on it, Daddy. Do you know what the fretboards on a guitar are made of? When they're black like this?
I think it's probably ebony wood. Would be a guess. Rosewood. Is that right?
Yeah. And a blonde neck's going to be made out of maple.
There's a lot of structural integrity in a guitar. I really realized that with my Matchbox or my cigar box guitar that I have, because it just does not have the structural integrity.
If you inspect the side of this, you'll see all the different.
They have all sorts of slats in there to stabilize it and to.
And the other thing I love about this guitar is if you look at the back of it from here to here, it's got a little bit of curve.
Yeah, there's
the other thing too I want to tell you about acoustic guitars, the shape of an acoustic guitar, the tonality and sound is created by that circle.
By that
they make ones that are cut away.
Hourglass shape.
Yeah. Well, this is called a dreadnought.
Yeah.
That's what this style is.
Yours is solid. It only has the circle cutaway in the middle. And you've got a nice ring of abalone.
Yeah, so the sound's going to go in here. It's going to come around here, and it's going to drop back here, and that's what you're hearing. You're hearing it reverberate inside this cavity made of wood.
So you were kind of pointing that it kind of comes from like the top where like the neck is of the guitar. The sound kind of reverberates inside of there.
That's where
you get down, it cycles around from the upper part of it to the bottom.
So cutaways sound a little different.
Yeah.
Then they make semi-hollow body electric guitars where you get the pickups and the cavity sound.
And the cavities.
Yeah.
See, I was thinking about that earlier today. I was like, I wonder if guitars, if electric guitars, because as far as I understand it, like the inside of that guitar, that shape, That's just a big hunk of plastic, basically, or something else, or a hunk of wood. But there are some that do have functional cavities.
Yeah, and the wood's going to give it a different tone as well. What kind of wood's it made of?
Yeah.
This is all mahogany.
And if it's aged properly, and it's a beautiful guitar, and it's almost a shame that these things can be purchased. Like this is it in itself is a magnificent piece of artwork, right?
I feel like that.
It's amazing that
the guys that build them are artists, man.
Bucks.
They're artists. You know what kind of talent it takes to put that together and make it perfect, and then have your finish guy put everything on there, and then attach all these components and these machine heads. Those are called machine heads.
There's something that's like we're sitting here in your apartment, and there's something that's unique about the guitar. That not only is it a musical instrument, but it's also handmade out of fine woods of many. There's a few different types of wood here.
There's so many that they use. Oh yeah.
Well, even on this one guitar, you've got the rosewood for the neck. Is it rosewood and then maple on the front?
And you know what they also?
I
was wrong. I told you wrong. You know what this is? It's not maple. It's spruce.
It's spruce.
And most of the good spruce guitars come. There's a Fender's factory in Montana. They use Wyoming or Montana spruce.
How beautiful.
And it's the story behind all this. And the thing with an acoustic guitar like this, on the back of each string is a little round brass piece that the string's wound around. You have to pull these pegs out.
Oh, is that right? They're pegged.
Yeah.
So then these are pegged at the bottom.
They have little teeny tiny circles of brass wire that the string's wrapped around, and then you're just going to have a loose end, and you trim the top off. And when you actually string a guitar, so it stays in tune, it's very important to put a lot of wounds here. You don't just do a couple of times.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, and then when you're tuning a guitar, when you first put a new set of strings on it, they need to be stretched.
Yeah.
Or they just go right back out of tune. So you have to physically grab them and pull on them and stretch them, and then retune, and then do it again and again. Then bang out on it for a while, and it's going to go out again, and then you just keep retuning it and stretching them until the guitar the strings stretch out a little bit, and then they'll stay in tune better.
Oh, so you kind of like pre-stretch it to kind of get to that result faster.
That's precisely correct.
Otherwise, the people that that I knew that had guitars, it kind of got me interested in getting one. They would tune their guitars all the time. It's like,
am I mistaken?
They'd have
is it after 10 o'clock? Or is that clock?
I think that's probably right. It's probably. Yeah. I think it's been.
It is because
you need to go to bed.
No, dude, I'm a night owl. I don't have to be in until 10:30. I could talk for hours, man. But I am enjoying this. I mean, I didn't think it would be anything like this, where you and me just talk about a little chapter in my life, and I look at my life like every day's a new page.
Yeah.
It's like a book almost.
Well, you're an artist, and you draw and paint, and hopefully we'll get some video of you doing a time-lapse painting.
I'd love to do an
instructional video if you want to.
That would be great.
Yeah, dude, I'll totally help you film that. And
you know what? I have to be really focused to be able to do it in the time frame that we're probably talking about, because Sue's going to watch me paint for 2 hours. I got to do one in 30 minutes like Bob Ross does.
Oh, well, no, you could do a 2-hour painting session. I mean, if you're doing an instructional and it's 2 hours long.
Show them how I do the sky
my cameras
first.
can run that long easy.
Show them how to do the sky first, and we could come back another day. And then I drop the mountains and come back another day. And then we put a river in, and then come back another day, and we put the foreground or whatever details we want in there.
Yeah, I can get you set up to do that.
So the thing that I love about doing artwork is it challenges my mind to be not only just somebody that applies the paint to the canvas, but somebody that puts thought into the balance of the picture, and where you have to make bravery decisions after you do those mountains in that river.
Yeah,
you got to start dropping those trees in there.
I mean, I'm looking at a painting that you just did, and this is a big one, right? Do you know what the dimension is?
3 feet by 4 feet. And that is my pride and joy. That's one of the best I've ever done.
36 by 48. It's huge. And you've got a pretty much your sky is flawless. You've got the blue sky.
It's subtle.
with like white fluffy clouds.
It's very subtle.
But it's like it's really well balanced, you know, and like you definitely like I can. Like I'm not really an artist.
Didn't you tell me to draw a little bit?
I design shit in CAD, right? I do CAD design.
I know what CAD is, yeah.
And I can.
I'm going to set my guitar back down for a second. But yeah, keep going.
And I can do like
my brother taught me what CAD is.
Yeah. But I can do 3D sculpting in there, right?
Ooh, that's hard to do too, man.
Well, not really.
I know a girl named Rachel that's really good at it.
Okay, so let's say I'm going to do mountains, right?
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would do just an outline, like a 2D outline of the mountains, right? Just like lines.
Yep.
And then I would raise those mountains up like a millimeter, let's say, for a ring. And then I can smooth the tops of those mountains out. And so you get like a really like organic look for a ring. And that's like using a sculpting tool to kind of smooth those surfaces out. But like I can, you know, like I know about like working mountains. I've done that in rings a lot, and like how to make it look balanced well. Because like you have mountains here that, you know, you've got 2 major peaks and maybe 5 or 6 minor peaks, and then maybe 7 like sub-minor.
Okay,
like,
so the idea with the mountains, I would probably make this comment. What you want to be is like nature is, and it's extremely random. If you make those things look like teepees, they're going to look like crap.
When they kind of like they're lower, they're a little bit lower on the left side than the right side.
Sure,
you kind of get this feeling that it's kind of like imposing.
That's coming down.
The range isn't totally square to you. You're kind of angled a little bit to that range.
You kind of want to do that.
You kind of get that feeling, but that angling is also picked up in your painting, like towards the bottom. Like you have that same sort of a flow from right to left of the picture. It's
so before any of those trees went in,
it does something to
any of the trees went in. The next thing I do after that mountain is painted, I always start with the sky. I usually do the sky all the way down from top to bottom, even though I'm only going to use that top part of the sky. But I might make a decision that my mountains aren't going to be as tall.
Yeah.
So I want to have the whole sky there. And then once I establish that randomness in those mountains, the next thing I do is I take a brush and I make sure it's very, very dried out. I might let it sit overnight so it's completely dry. And then I put just the slightest hint of white on the tips of that brush. And you do this crisscrossing motion to give that mist behind the trees. I learned that from Bob Ross.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Really?
From watching Bob do his
mist behind the trees.
Mist in the background. He's like, it gives you depth. It makes that like a faraway looking place when you look at those trees. It's like if I walked back there, that might be 200 yards from where those trees are growing.
Yeah, it's really...
And it makes a little
that's
spooky.
That's really subtle. Like you had to kind
subtle and spooky. You don't want it to be too stark.
Like your mountains are like... It's almost as though the mountains are in the shadow, right? Like the sun is setting behind them.
Or it could be just coming up and we don't have sunlight on them yet.
Right, or that. Yeah.
And another thing's important too is if you want your mountains to show like
that's a good
snow caps, then you're going to decide what side of the painting the light comes from, and those snow caps are only going to reflect which direction the sun's coming from.
Yeah.
And normally it's going to be like Bob Ross has always used the corners, so he would highlight all the left-hand side of those peaks if he put the light from there, and vice versa if he puts the sun in the top corner.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to show the sun, you just have to show the light.
Right. You have to think about that.
So here's the deal. With doing that shadowing, I watch him, and what he uses actually is a metal knife, and it's got a 45 on the end of it.
Yeah.
And you're going to mix your paint. And then what you're going to do, you're not going to put a bunch of globs on there. You gently drag it through, and you get a teeny tiny bit of paint on the edge of the chisel, and then you just give it a wiggle as you come down.
Huh.
And he says, not a lot of pressure. It's going to take time to get good at this.
This is for the trees?
For the mountain shadows.
For the mountain shadows.
Yeah, like if you want to put snow on the sides of those mountains, man. That's hard to do, dude. I'm telling you, it is hard to do.
like I do wax work, right? So I do jewelry pieces. And,
oh, cool! No way.
Yeah, and
you got any for sale? I'll get Susie something for Valentine's Day.
I've got some.
How about a necklace?
I do have some stuff, but most of I have a lot of waxes, right?
Yeah.
And like I would probably just make something for you custom. Like I have a bunch of.
That's going to cost a lot of money. I want something you've already done that you're willing to.
No, it won't cost that much actually.
Wow.
Because I won't.
See, so then you've got skills too,
Yeah.
I don't know how to make flipping jewelry. I love to paint and play music.
Like I do the jewelry design, and like I make a wax model. Like somebody else has to go in and set stones and stuff. I can do that. I've been trained in doing it, but I haven't done it very much.
Right. So anybody that might be listening to this podcast when you post it, I want them to hear what I call my theme song for your podcast. And it's called the Happy Song, and it goes... That's it.
I love it.
It's just your little melody, and it's the Happy Song.
That's a great melody.
Yeah, ding,
absolutely.
Ding,
Will you play it again?
Yeah, sure. Let's see, sorry, excuse me. It's perfect. It's an intro melody.
It's perfect. Yeah. Well, I'm probably gonna cut it right off of there. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, and then I could do it 8 times. Ding 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 ding. Or you would just one rung
just
and then
that quick little intro, man.
Yeah,
I mean, I might cut that. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the audio is.
First time I played that with my girlfriend, she goes, "What is that?" And I said, "That's a Scotty song." And she goes, "What the hell do you call it?" And I said, "It's the Happy Song."
Dude, that's because it makes you feel song that,
light and lively,
dude.
Yeah, it's light and lively.
Dude, I think I should, with your permission, if you want.
Yeah, you want
to take a picture of that.
You got it.
The painting to put.
Yeah, let's take the moon off
what
there.
I'll do is I'll upload this to YouTube. I think that's what I'm going to do first.
The podcast and my artwork.
Well, what I'll do in the YouTube episode is I'll have a picture of
very well
on there.
Well,
but you definitely don't want to totally give your whole painting away. So you know what? I might take a picture of it just like that because that's how we were looking at it. We didn't even see the other part.
What, with that picture over the top of that?
Yeah.
No, why would you do that?
Now you want okay. Well,
let's take that limiter off.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, some people think about the fact that if I take a really good picture of this and it's squared up and everything, then there's a digital form of it in its completion.
Right.
You know? So you have to think about that as an artist.
I wish it was the daytime, but if you look at this just right and you point your camera, you'll get the glitter. Do you see the glitter from where you're sitting?
I'll use my good camera.
Do you see this here?
Well, you know what? We can play around with the flash on this one.
Yeah. You can take more than one photograph until you find one you like.
Yeah, well, it's up to you.
I don't want to share my art with everybody.
No, it's your art, so you have to approve the picture. You have
it's already approved.
That's to get your...
Need a receipt?
Yeah, I've got this paperwork written up. My lawyer made it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I listened to, you know who Joe Rogan is?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, that's a video. So Joe Rogan has a podcast, and, he has people come on all the time, and, what he does now is, or at least you hear people that are on the show talk about it. Let's see if it works.
Mine takes two... there you go, you got it. There you got it.
Why does it do that?
Because mine does the same thing. It's focusing first, and then you have to just wait for it to actually flash. Because it's dark and it wants to use its flash. And believe it or not, when I paint,
I got a good one there.
I do my best work in natural sunlight, not with...
Do you know what's great is you just walk in the other room and this microphone is good enough that we'll be able to hear you talking.
Isn't that good?
It's actually that good.
Wow.
At least it works out well somewhere else, but...
Interesting. So, here's the deal. I can't commit to doing one of these every night. But we could do more. One episode an evening.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could. I'm planning on recording like rather than doing like a fixed thing. Like I'm gonna go and hang out with my brother, and when I'm hanging out with him, I'll record, and kind of have like floating guests. So yeah, I mean, I definitely want to do more shows with you for sure, but don't feel like obligated to have to do
but I enjoy
a lot.
But because I'm a socialite and I don't like to just sit at home and twiddle my thumbs and watch TV. And on the days that I work, usually by the time I get home, I'm usually not picking up a brush. I'm either strumming that thing or I'm staring at that thing. So this is like a treat.
It's kind of interesting.
It's a treat for me is what it is, really. Because
it's interesting that playing guitar is like that's like a pastime for you.
it's also a passion.
It's interesting because like painting, on the other hand, I think most painters would say like, oh, if I come home after a day's work, I don't go and paint. Like I would have to say most people would be like,
I'm as serious now.
I'm going to do something like I enjoy.
I'm as serious about this now as I started to tell myself, if you really focus, you can become a great musician. And if you practice a lot and you surround yourself with other great musicians, eventually, almost every time I've ever jammed with a new musician that I've never played with, I always go home with just a little something more about something when it comes
Isn't that funny how that works?
Structure of music. Or every time I watch an episode of My Hero.
It's like you learn more, with like each exposure of that.
As equally as important as that is, I would also like to make the comment that everybody I know that wants to say, well, gosh, do you think I could ever learn how to play like that? I said, well, if you think about it, I said, for years and years and years, I pick my guitar up every day, and it don't collect no dust.
Yeah.
There's not a day that goes by where I don't at least get on it for a few minutes, and sometimes for hours.
See, that's what it takes to
it's dedication.
Really, to be really, really good.
And I listened to this one guitar player talk about that too. And even though that video we put on there was just noodling around kind of, but I'm practicing my technique, he says every time you pick up your guitar, challenge you to at least try to learn something a little bit new, maybe a new chord or a new order of notes in a riff, or possibly a new scale, because there's thousands of scales, dude.
Well, and all of those actions and those muscle memories and that all correlates to different pathways in your brain, like being developed.
There's got to be wired somehow,
dude. It's crazy, and like those neurons are like, bridging connections or like creating new combinations that are
exactly, and
responsible for those.
It's funny because some of my coworkers at the grocery store I work at look at me like, okay, maybe I'm a little bit, I got long hair, and they know I'm like a groovy cat who was born in the 60s. Yeah. I don't think they really know. They haven't experienced what it is to watch me play the bass or guitar. And then when I give them a website to go to, like on YouTube, to look at my videos, they'll come back the next day and say, what? That's cool.
Yeah.
Or I'll show them a painting and they'll say, well, Benjamin, who's my one really good friend that works there, he's pretty young. I show him my paintings and he goes, if you can do that, what are you doing working at a grocery store? But I have to have my market. I don't have a market.
Well, it's like, like everybody says shit like that, where it's like you should be ashamed that you're not a millionaire because you've got these skills, that you're working a common person's job and you've got this or that, and it's like that's not what life is about,
My other friend Tim says I don't charge enough for my art. You short sell yourself. He goes, something like that should be $1,000.
This large one?
I said 400. Yeah. I said 400.
I mean,
but you know what? If I'm just showing it to the average.
I don't know, dude. I mean, like, who do you want to have your art? You know, do you want to price people out and then
not sell it and say, well, that's too much that's too rich for my blood?
Or do you want it to wind up in some rich person's home?
I don't mind start
where like nobody sees it, or do you want it to wind up in like someone's living room where they have
all their friends come over?
And that's like, dude,
dude,
the creepiest thing happened to me the other day. I went over to Bruce's apartment.
Which one's
Bruce?
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah, and he's on the second floor down here, or no?
No, Bruce, the guy that rents garages.
Oh, the garage guy with the bicycles. Yeah.
That's so funny.
He's a cool cat.
Yeah. So I went over to his house. Yeah. There's a picture in his apartment, and it looks like it's this. It's kind of like an orange scale, I guess you could say. And there's a picture of like a somewhat like bushy tree, like a kind of like two bushy trees, and it's kind of just like a scenery thing, but it's all in orange.
What do you mean a scale, though? I don't get it.
Like the color scale.
So
it's all orange,
Yeah, because I look at color scale. See,
it's like an old style of like, it's an old photograph is what it is, and it's developed in a certain way where it's like, that brown, reddish, negative sort of color.
Well, sure.
But, I don't know exactly what the deal is.
So it's actually called the spectrum.
Oh, the color spectrum.
Yeah, so here's an example of a spectrum. Susie got me some paints that her brother, he started dabbling in painting, and he said, I just don't do it anymore, so you can have these.
Oh,
and there's your color scale, all the way from your very light yellows, oranges, reds, and it goes into the greens and the blues. And do you know the color wheel?
Yeah.
Do you know which color and which color make what color?
Sort of.
Sort of, yeah.
No. Because I have to mess with that sort of stuff every once in a while with the
we should get you.
Design,
if you looked at a color wheel, you'd see how it worked. And there's what they call.
But yeah, so the story I was telling was that I see this picture, and it must have been by the same artist.
Oh, okay.
Here in Colorado.
Okay.
And and it was almost, if it wasn't the exact same one, it's something really, really similar. And then, like, I remembered, like, oh, this was the picture that, like, was in my house that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And, like, there's like, major attachments to that, And so, like, if you sell a painting for what you consider a fair price, and it winds up being in an environment where,
I'd like for it to be somewhere where everyone can see it.
Right. Like, well, I mean, we all want it to be in a museum, but what's second best to that? For it to be in a family's, like, living room where people are looking at it all the time, right? I mean,
not like a retired couple. Who's ever going to see that?
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess a lot of artists probably don't, like, think about this, but like, who's viewing it, and, like, is it just winding up just being shelved away, I mean, you don't create art thinking about that, typically,
I never wanted to even get money for it, and now I'm like, I'm getting better.
Like, you paint to paint. You paint to create.
For the love of doing it.
But like the whole action of like creating and then letting go, you've given a lot of art away, right?
Tons.
I mean, how does that feel when you give it away?
To my family at holidays and birthdays?
Yeah.
Incredible. To my coworkers on their birthdays? Incredible. Here, you can have this, happy birthday. There's nothing that compares with that feeling.
Yeah.
Especially when you see their face light up and go, for me? You're giving this to me? And I'm like, yeah, it's your damn birthday.
Yeah, dude.
And some of my coworkers, I have their phone numbers, so I'll give them a painting, and if I come home before they get off, I'll call them. They're not really supposed to take calls at the service desk. And then I'll pick up my acoustic guitar, and I'll sing happy birthday to them. That feels good, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's funny. This one I wanted to show you, too. I sold that.
See, I mean, that's what life is
a couple months ago, man.
I was doing stuff like that.
And that was just a skosh smaller than that one. But that was, she gave me $200 for that one.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a regular customer at King Supers.
Yeah, those are some crazy.
She works at a Waffle House.
And this one are a little bit crazier than the mountains.
Maybe a skosh.
This one. I mean, I think you have...
It's more of a black and white idea.
Yeah.
Do you see any color in there besides those colors? Black, white, and gray? I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could say maybe a bluish.
A little bluish hue in the sky, but that's
gray. It really
extremely subtle, man. I mean, that is way more subtle than those clouds right there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show you the one that I tried to emulate, and I gave this picture to my mom for Christmas. Here's a birthday painting I gave to a King Supers girl.
Oh, you painted it on a circle canvas?
No, that's framed and matted.
Yeah.
Like frames like you gave me. Yeah. She loved that. And the ring that goes around the outside matches the pink and the clouds. And I'll close up on it so you can see what I'm talking about. So see those clouds that are kind of a pinkish hue?
Yeah.
Well, the second cut on the mat is the same idea I went for with that pink tint on the mat from the frame. And then if we just drop it back like that again, you can see how that kind of all blends together with a pink foreground.
That's a really good painting there, man. So
see how distant those mountains and how little they are, or far away, and a very light color. And then just dropping a few trees in there. And on this one, there's some aspens, not just pines. You want to see another close-up so you get an idea of what I'm talking about?
Do you have you don't have a website, do you?
No, but I'd like to. My friend wants to build one for me.
You know,
see the aspens in the middle?
Oh, yeah.
So they're just like straight up and down with little hooky-doos. You want those to be really random and maybe give them a little light on the bark. So the light's coming from this side on the trees.
Right.
Do you get it?
Right, yeah.
Because there it is on the left, the left, the left, the left. So,
do you have a cigarette?
I got plenty of cigarettes, dude. I just got paid.
You got the $dollars.
Almost, baby. So here's one I want to show you that I tried to copy one of the paintings in my home. Oh, this was a birthday present too, and that one's cool. There's not much to it.
Yeah, I fucking don't. It's like green leaves and a black background.
It's all aspen trees, black mountains, and all white. It's like a snow scene. But so we're going to look at that painting on the wall over there, the black and white one with the big white cliffs. And as hard as I tried to sort of do something like that, this is what I came up with. And it doesn't do that one. Oh, yeah, I sold that one too to a guy from Jamaica named Newman Forrester. He didn't want to give me my asking price.